Okay, take it away, Sluggo.
Hey, everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back with the 124th, count them 124 Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom calls, otherwise known as the GREEP or the GreeGree. We have a full agenda as always. I want to welcome our listeners at the Progressive Radio Network at the GRN in Columbus, Ohio, and all you live streaming on YouTube. It's great to have you with us. For those of you who have video, you can see them at the beach. We've got 30 people with us to start from all over the United States and sometimes from Great Britain as well. We have a very, very full agenda today. We're going to start talking, of course, this being America, we're going to start talking about pro football and the two games that occurred yesterday, Sunday, between the Philadelphia Eagles and the San Francisco 49ers and the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Kansas City Chiefs. The reason we're going to do it, among other things, is there was a major incident at the San Francisco game that we have talked about before, and I'm on with a fellow football fan, TATANKA BRICCA. Many of you others a lot of you hate football, and for good reasons, and we do want to discuss that. I will have a piece tomorrow at Reader Supported News about it. That we can link to. So we're going to start with that. Then we're going to go into Florida and the turmoil in Florida, the insanity with the fascist governor who's getting worse and worse. And they're basically burning books there, as they are in Texas. And also we're going to talk about with Wendy Lederman about how the organization of the opposition or lack thereof is going in Florida. It appears at this point, since Donald Trump seems to be serious about running for president again, that both major candidates for the Republican nomination will be from Florida, Trump and Ron DeSantis. So we have a lot to talk about coming out of Florida. We're also going to talk about Peru. There's virtually no coverage of the huge uprising that's going on in Peru. There's a Rolling Stone piece out now by Josh Fox, who has been on our calls, saying basically that more than 50 people have been killed in Peru in the wake of the overthrow of the progressive president there. We want to talk about the battle over the forest in Atlanta, where a kid has already been killed, an activist, and there's a major trial in Ohio. You couldn't make this one up. The $61 million bribe was used to buy the Ohio legislature to bail out their nuclear plant there. So we'll deal with that either in the first or second hour. In the second hour, we're going to talk about huge developments in the licensing of the nuclear plant at Diablo Canyon, San Luis Obispo, which is actually going to carry over to the whole industry. It's a very, very big deal. Could be a major turning point, actually, in the history of energy and of nuclear power in this country. Issues both in California and in Michigan, where similar issues are being dealt with. And we're also going to talk about what may be the most important technological breakthrough in alternative energy going on now, which is the potential switch of battery technologies from lithium, which is very problematic both financially and ecologically, over to sodium, which is a cheap and readily available and not environmentally destructive, certainly not compared to lithium. So we've got a very, very full agenda as always. There you go. Steve has helpfully put up a new EV, electric vehicle, with a 641-mile range, which is pretty amazing. So we'll talk about that in the second hour. Thanks for that, Steve. We are engineered today by Mike HERSH, courtesy of the Progressive Democrats of America. We're using their Zoom link, although I want to give you a heads up. We will be switching Zoom links toward the end of February, and we also not be meeting on the weekend of President's Day, which I believe is February 20th, which February 22nd used to be the birthday of George Washington, but we've changed that now, but we will be off that Monday. So at any rate, it's great to see everybody. We got 40 people with us, and we have a full agenda. we are going to start talking about football. Some of you may be fans, some of you may hate the game, but the bottom line is that we have advocated, we are the first to advocate that the National Football League go to flag football. For those of you who don't follow it, the sport as it's currently structured, people beat the hell out of each other, and the person who happens to have the ball is brutally tackled. Now, okay, that's the nature of the game. We know now that the CTE, there you go. That was my original article, Counterpunch. I'm going to have another one at tomorrow at Reader Supported News, rsn.org, talking about what happened this weekend. What happened this weekend was actually earth-shattering, because you had a full season, 16, 17 games, billions of dollars involved in the game of pro football. The NFL is one of the most profitable public operations in the country, in the history of the country at that. And you had a full season wrapped up with the San Francisco 49ers. He had a young quarterback, came out of nowhere. He's 23 years old, for God's sakes. And the Niners came up, and I know Tatanka is a big Niners fan, and John Steiner is with us, another football fan of the Bengals, being a Cincinnati boy. So the Niners come up to play the Eagles. And football, pro or otherwise, is a very quarterback-centric game. You're 90% of your outcome, generally, there are exceptions, but 90% of your outcome in a pro football game is dependent on the quarterback. So the whole world is watching. They convene in Philadelphia. The Niners are there. They've got this young kid who came out of nowhere, Brock Purdy. And really, nobody expected him to do what he did. He was single-handed, well, not single-handedly, the Niners had a pretty good team otherwise, but he took the Niners all the way into the championship game. And 5 minutes into the first quarter, he's injured. A perfectly legal hit. He's throwing the ball. The guy hits him in the shoulder and destroys his elbow. So the kid can't pass. And suddenly, the game, which was 7-0 at the time in favor of the Eagles, but the Niners were driving, suddenly the game is moot. They put in a backup quarterback who's 36 years old, does nothing, and then he has a concussion. And they got to take the backup quarterback out of the game and put this poor kid, Brock Purdy, back in the game, and he can't throw. And so the game becomes completely unwatchable. Billions of dollars invested in this. So we have advocated on this Zoom call, and my articles have advocated that they go to flag football, which is the quarterback, and then all of them have a flag stuck in the back of their pants. And instead of tackling the quarterback, or the ball carrier, they pull the flag out. Now, to many of you, this might sound ridiculous, or even to discuss it, but it's actually a multi-billion-dollar issue, and it cuts to the core of American culture. Because if you have the number one most popular game in the country, you have guys who are being, and it's all guys, by the way. There's never been a woman in the NFL, although they probably could have a kicker at this point. But nonetheless, if you have the marquee sport in your culture, where guys are getting slammed, and where an entire game, an entire season can go out the window based on one tackle, which happened yesterday, then something's got to change. So we are advocating, and I am going to tell you right now, you're hearing this first, within 10 years or less, the quarterbacks in the NFL will have flags, and it will become illegal to hit a quarterback behind the line of scrimmage for many reasons, most of them humane, but the other one is that the NFL owners have multi-million-dollar investments in these quarterbacks. The quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs, who's barely 30 years old, Patrick Mahomes, I mean, he's a great ball player. Seems like a nice kid, actually. They are paying him, are you ready for this? His contract for 10 years of playing with the Kansas City Chiefs is $450 million. I'll repeat that. They're paying the quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs $450 million. If he gets hurt, they're out. There's nothing. Tatanka, you are in mourning for the San Francisco 49ers. You saw the whole season go out the window with a single hit. Do you want to comment on this real quick? We will get to the issues for those of you who hate sports, but I consider this actually to be quite significant in our culture. And then I'll go to John Steiner.
First
Tatanka.
of all, one edit, Harvey. That's a great intro. I don't mourn, I organize. I have a little distance on the game. I actually went 10 years in the 70s, loved Stanford football too, and just refused to watch a game, either college or pro, just to wean myself of it. But it's in my DNA. And so, this is something. I mean, also, the third quarterback was also unable to come in for the Niners because he was previously injured. They started with the guy was going to be the star. He's knocked out for the season. Then they start a second guy, he gets knocked out. And then Brock Purdy, this young guy, comes out and he gets knocked out. So I think it's a really, it's a fascinating, important idea because I think it's going to stir up some conversation. And Stephen A., there's a number of people who comment on football. I like Stephen A. And when they interviewed him, there were guys gloating on the other side who liked who won the game. And they're expecting him to offer some sort of fight or resistance. And he said, I'm just overwhelming sadness because the build up to the game, we were going to look at a competitive game. As it was all over once he was hit. And that's the sentiment. But even then, the concept of some kind of alternative for the quarterback has not hit. So there's nowhere to go with it. It's just like, and the 49er players are saying, that's it. That's life. That's life in the NFL. The average duration of a career in the NFL is 5 years because of injury.
Right. And the injury rate for a guy entering the NFL, the expectancy of being, except for the kickers, the expectancy of being seriously injured is 100%. Nobody enters the NFL, has a career, and comes out the other end without having been seriously injured, including the marquee quarterbacks. Both Tom Brady, who's now 45, and Aaron Rodgers, who's 39, they've both been seriously injured. Aaron Rodgers is being paid $250,000. Tom Brady God knows what they pay him. So it's actually in the interest of the owners, I believe, to do this. I do also want to mention Colin Kaepernick, by the way. Colin Kaepernick was the 49ers quarterback. And then they basically banned him from football for the brilliant move of kneeling during the Star Spangled Banner, which is one of the worst songs in the history of the world. I'm sorry, but a national anthem that bad, they should be ashamed. They should get except when Jimi Hendrix played it. The national anthem is only cool when Jimi Hendrix played it, and he didn't play the words. And I got to tell you, this was a great story. I love tangents, but after Jimi Hendrix was discovered playing, after they heard how Jimi Hendrix played the national anthem in the film about Woodstock, there was a congressional hearing. They were so angry about how he played the Star Spangled Banner, they had a congressional hearing. And after the hearing, a filmmaker interviewed the congressmen who were so angry about Jimi Hendrix's version of Star Spangled Banner, and they asked these guys to recite the words to the Star Spangled Banner, and none of them could do it. So, so Colin Kaepernick could have been on the bench for the San Francisco 49ers. He could have been the backup quarterback. He has had a tremendous career as an activist. I'd love to have Colin Kaepernick talk to us. His politics are spectacular, and he has made a real difference in this world. And the Niners would not, if he had been on the bench and come in there, it would have been an incredible moment in American history. But there you go. They missed that too. John Steiner, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, just so you know, Harvey, during the Pro Bowl weekend, there is going to be a flag football game among NFL players.
Right.
So it's moving in that direction. I would have a lot to say about the Bengals game, but I'm not sure that our audience are as rabid football fans as we are. So I'm going to give us a pass, but you and I have an offline conversation coming up.
Yes, yes. Well, I will say this, the young, very young quarterback, he would say he's 12 years old, this quarterback, Joe Burrow. He's from Southern Ohio. He is outspokenly pro-choice.
Yep.
And we have had some interesting situations with the politics of football stars. I mentioned Kaepernick. Aaron Rodgers, the legendary, I think he's actually the best quarterback, or has been the best quarterback in the NFL. Not anymore, but
Harvey,
I have a, yeah, go ahead.
I have a suggestion for a guest on this show.
Yeah.
We could combine a discussion about Diablo Canyon and a discussion about professional football. And we get either one of the four women, but get Jane Fonda or Lily Tomlin or Sally Fields or Rita Moreno, and they could bring on Tom Brady, whom they love. I mean, you're probably all aware that this film is going to open in a few days, but it's a film based on older women in New England who are big Tom Brady fans. So they based this film on it, and it's just hilarious with those. But that would be really, it's possible. We could get Jane to come talk about Diablo Canyon and football.
And Tom Brady could talk about how much he loves Trump.
Oh,
Yeah, right.
Well, that almost broke up his marriage earlier. His wife, Tom Brady's wife, by the way, for those of you who is
wait a minute, Harvey. How many rabbit holes did he go down as an introduction to one of these?
This is political, because when Tom Brady was out there supporting Donald Trump, his wife, Gisele Bundchen, the supermodel, shut him up right away. It was a big national yuck. Here you have the greatest quarterback in history supporting the president, and his wife comes down and puts the hammer on him. And his wife was the only NFL wife who made more money than her husband did. But at any rate, we're really going off the deep end here. But I did want to mention that Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, was a great quarterback. Very openly attacked the right-wing governor of Wisconsin, Scott Walker, who was a complete moron, and Rodgers attacked him. And later, this past year in the offseason, Aaron Rodgers took ayahuasca and was very public about it. And so we are hoping that maybe he'll convene a giant ayahuasca ceremony in Lambeau Field. That will be really exciting.
I also want to point out for people who are unaware that you have some of the most honest conversation about racism among sports broadcasters. On Stephen A's show, they had 3 African Americans talking about this latest murder that's all been, was caught by a camera across the street. And he basically laid it all out and what the cover up for the police was. And he says, all these 5 men were all African American. So it's not about, what it's about now is blue. It's about the police department. It's about systemic racism in police departments throughout the country. So this conversation is happening on sports TV.
Well, one of the reasons some of us lefties love sports is because it is so political. I mean, the NBA has long been a majority of black ball players, and so is the NFL. And these guys, Jim Brown has been very political through his career. He did show up in the White House with Kanye West with Donald Trump. It's weird, but nonetheless, so it is very political. Dennis Bernstein is on with us. Dennis, if you will unmute you. Dennis is the host of the KPFA show Flashpoints in the Bay Area, available on the Pacifica Network. Dennis, I know you may or may not be a big 49ers fan. We're going to talk about it on your show soon. But and I do have an article tomorrow at Reader Supported News. But go ahead, Dennis. Dennis.
Well, I'm not a football fan. Tackle. I love.
You were a champion gymnast. So
I played and I played football, a little football and stuff. But I just wanted to throw this in. I have heard, and I didn't take notes, but I've heard on more than one occasion people beginning to broach putting back the guy, I'm blanking on his name, who almost died on the field.
Oh yeah.
Damar Hamlin.
He's getting better so much faster that literally I'm hearing some folks, and this of course is about the nature of economy. I'm hearing people say, well, maybe he could play again. But I'm just thinking, if he does play on the field and he dies on the field, that might move us along or maybe not.
Well,
But then it's still in the discussion. People say, you know, he's unbelievable how fast he recovered.
yeah, but he's got a heart condition, for God's sakes. And you know, if he dies on the field, they'll probably feed him to the lions. My friend Lisa Matras has just commented on the 49ers game. I know she lives in San Francisco, and is one of the, to tell you about sports. My friend Lisa, I hope you don't mind, Lisa, but she grew up in Chicago, and when the Cubs won the World Series, she and her sister Susan flew back to Chicago to participate in the rally that honoring the Chicago Cubs. And Lisa's one of the most political people I know. I thought that was so great, Lisa. It must have been really fun. You're welcome to comment if you want. We will certainly just raise your hand. But there's never been a boundary between sports and politics, especially in the United States today. Go ahead, Davis.
Here's one sports story, because sports are crucial, and I love sports, and I love people to survive them. But my sports and my politics sort of came together at the same time. In 1967, I won the New York State High School Gymnastic Championship. And the person who was at the meet to give out the trophies was a guy by the name of Robert Kennedy.
Oh my God.
He was running for Senate in New York. And this is how my political career started. Can you imagine? He gave me the trophy. We have the picture. And then how much time after that was he dead? He was assassinated shortly after that. In my whole life, I couldn't even begin to understand why anybody would do this. So that's sort of where sports and politics began.
Well, I actually met Tommy, Juan Carlos or Tommy Smith. I can't remember the two guys who raised their fists at Mexico City. Talk about the confluence of sports. And then, of course, there was Muhammad Ali, who, I mean, you go back and read what Muhammad Ali was saying about the Vietnam War. Right. No one was clearer about the intersection of politics, race, and sports than Muhammad Ali. I mean, that was a mind-bending conjunction there. Really, really important. And Colin Kaepernick, I have to say, reach out to him again. I mean, his career, he was not some one-trick pony here. He knelt for the national anthem. They kicked him out of the NFL. If he'd have been on the bench at San Francisco, he could have totally changed that game. He should have been. He's a great runner, Colin Kaepernick. But he has had a magnificent career as an activist. I mean, he is very, very smart and has really made the most of his celebrity. So, Lisa, if you want to tell us about the Cubs rally in Chicago, we'd be glad to hear from you. You can unmute if you want. There you go. Yes, Lisa.
It was one of the highlights of my life. Let's put it that way.
Chicago, following the Chicago Cubs must have been.
I mean, we had waited through my grandparents and my parents' lives for this moment. You know, it was almost as exciting, but probably more exciting than when the Red Sox won.
Yes.
And that was fabulous too. So I think, given the way things are right now, sports takes my attention away from things that are just really sad and terrible. And I think it does that for a lot of people, political or not. So Chicago was a highlight. Let's put it that way.
Well, you have the honor of being married to a Red Sox fan. So between the Cubs and the Red Sox, you guys have had a pretty good run.
This was a good century, yes.
Yeah, right. Okay, thank you, Liz. It's always great to see you. Mary, and then Justin, and then we're going to move on. But I'm glad for this discussion. It's really fun and very important. Go ahead, Mary. Mary Stonewall.
Okay, number one.
John Brakey, it's good to see you. We do want to talk about this ballot situation in Arizona in a couple minutes. Go ahead, Mary.
Okay, number one, the big thing with football I've seen it with the Seattle Seahawks and other places, is football players that have been retired don't have money to pay for all the head trauma and body trauma that they have. So, and they were trying to sue Seattle Seahawks for damages and had no ground to stand on because they didn't put money aside for future health problems. Where I think the NFL needs to, that anybody that belongs to the NFL should have free lifetime medical, period.
Absolutely.
And then when it comes to our Buffalo Bill guy, he did receive the vaccine, and that
Yes, Mary, the vaccine issue did come out. A lot of people are saying that he had the health problem because of the vaccine. We don't know that for sure, but it's an interesting discussion. And then we'll go to Justin, and then Dorothy Reich, if I know, is a really huge football fan. Go ahead, go ahead, Justin.
So all of this comes down to the American mythos, right? It's pretty much entirely based on performance art. We take big risks and we get big rewards. The problem with that is we don't have very good risk assessment. So all the way down the economy, even to the banks, when people screw up, we bail them out. But that's what insurance is actually a system designed to do, right? To make that risk assessment and pay back when something goes wrong. But, for sports players, they don't have like baseline performance testing before they get into the game. So what happens often is there's even racism in that. Those who are black get paid less than those who are white because they are assumed to have been less performant to start with in terms of their brain performance or anything else.
Okay.
So really this comes down to an idea of valuing people from the start, from cradle to grave, that we actually give people good measurements to know what they're capable of and reward them when something goes wrong in life.
Good. Okay, thank you. By the way, you made it. You kicked off an interesting point. This will be the first Super Bowl where black quarterbacks are opposing each other. There was a Super Bowl which I saw actually way back when somebody's got interference here. Somebody's got a mute. There was a Super Bowl way back when a black quarterback came in and threw 5 touchdown passes. The great irony was that he played for the team in Washington, whose name we won't mention, which has been changed. But back then, it was a very racist name. And here Doug Williams came in, throws 5 touchdowns and beats the Broncos. But there you go. Dorothy Reich, I know you've been glued to the tube for these football games. Hold on. Gotta unmute you, Dorothy. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, actually interesting that the black players who had brain damage got less money because their brains were considered faulty to start with. I mean, football is so sick. I will just say 2 things. First of all, I think it was a huge change in our country when we went from baseball to football. And I think it probably started with Ronald Reagan.
It's an interesting point. I never thought of that.
Yes, we went from a peaceful, slow-moving game of skill to a violent, bone-crushing game of mayhem. And the other thing I will say is that Michael Vick went to jail for doing to dogs what the owners do to the players. And I don't see any difference between a quarterback or a running back or anybody else. The quarterbacks don't deserve any more protection, and their contracts with everybody else, if they get hurt, they're out. And these contracts are not guaranteed.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Dorothy. TATANKA, back to you.
Yeah, I just want to point out a more interesting to me conversation to have is just the different political people that come out of California, especially the Bay Area. Kaepernick is comes out of the San Francisco 49ers. Juan Carlos and the statues of the Olympians who put the fist up in Mexico City or at San Jose State. The improbable seasons of 3 World Series for the Giants, the current success of the Warriors, the Bill Walsh era of the 49ers are all people who strategically were out of the box thinkers and were more about egalitarian and more about team than the individual. It's just a very interesting conversation. It's no accident in my mind that it comes from here. It has everything to do with the birth of the free speech movement, the environmental movement, the women's movement. It's not separate. Silicon Valley, out of the box thinkers, Steve Jobs, et cetera.
Okay.
Future conversation.
I will mention also that I did personally meet the first outspoken deadhead in the NBA, who was Bill Walton. Who he talk about a radical sports hero, man. He was totally out there and completely upfront about it, and still is. So there you go. Okay, Leslie Roberts in Illinois, and then we're going to move on. I could talk about sports for the next 2 hours, but you know, we got work to do, folks. Okay, Leslie, go ahead. Leslie Roberts.
I was waiting for somebody to unmute me.
Okay, go ahead, please.
What other industry is there where people are traded? It sounds like
That's a great point.
enslaved people.
I never thought that is a great point. I really like that. That's
No, corporate capture is very big in sports in the United States and in the world.
and you do have one team that is owned by the community, and that's the Green Bay Packers. And it has to do with the founding of the league. The guy in the 1920s, they made a trade, and he was in the meatpacking business, and you know, but because of that, the owners, the corporate guys who own the NFL, have put a clause in the NFL Constitution saying that no more teams can be community owned. I mean, it's outrageous. So, you know, gay cocking, you jerks. Anyway, okay.
And
so
one community-owned state bank did not succumb to all the stuff in 2008, and we don't have more state banks, and we should.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, does anybody else want to say anything further about sports, or are we going to punt here? That was a great discussion. I had a piece on this at Counterpunch, and tomorrow I'll have a new updated piece on reader-supported news. And you watch, I'm going to guarantee you, within 10 years, the quarterbacks, at least in the NFL, will have flags, because the investment is too high. They can't afford it. They can't afford another debacle like this. This game yesterday was a travesty. Should never have happened like that. And I think that the NFL owners are not going to let it happen again. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. In any event, whatever happens, you heard it here first. Okay, we're going to move on into elections now. We had, Wendy Lederman is going to talk to us about Florida, but I want to start very quickly, Wendy, with John Brakey. We just had a major debacle of some kind in Arizona. I couldn't figure it out with paper ballots, and you also have a bill that's about to go through the legislature that could change the whole nature of elections in America. So with these minor points here, John Brakey, can you fill us in on what's going on?
A lot. But I first want to go back to one thing you said earlier. There is another arena of sports called politics. And I want to tell a story real quick about something that is absolutely incredible. But one of our own election integrity people that we've been working with for years in Memphis, Tennessee, a professor named Stephen Melroy, is the district attorney. And he is the first person to not cover anything up, expose things quick because of what happened in Tennessee with that young man dying at the hand of 5 cops. It's an incredible story. And not any riots or nothing, because he was proactive and he threw the gauntlet down. A minute he saw the videos, he fired them, and then he indicted them and he put them in jail before he released the film, because it was brutal, the film. And it's incredible that the real film that nailed him was really, they beat this after they almost killed him, getting him out of his car, and they maced themselves, the dumb cops. Then they chased him off, and they caught him under a camera, under a lamp. And you could see these cops brutally beating him, saying, "Stop resisting, don't do that." and he wasn't. They were just beating the hell out of him and killed him. And this guy, one of ours, election transparency activists, I believe in the old Hopi saying, we are the ones we're waiting for, because if we keep waiting, because there's nobody else to do it, he did it. And I salute this guy dressed incredibly, and I thank him for being my friend and restoring hope that one person can make a difference, because he did.
What's his name?
Stephen Melroy. Stephen Melroy. He's the district attorney. If you Google him, I'll put something on the blog and to explain that. And I guess in Arizona, yes, SB 1324, which is right behind me, is out, and it's going to have its first hearing probably the end of this week or next week. We're still making some minor adjustments. It's a breakthrough bill because, believe it or not, we broke the filibuster with the Democrats, and the bill has 4 co-sponsors in the Senate that are Democrats.
So it's
And that's a big thing.
And what are the, very quickly, John, what are the key provisions of this bill?
The key provision is to restore trust in elections by making elections in my state transparent, trackable, publicly verified, with a ballot library index system to be able to track back the ballot image to the original ballot as a redundant audit system, which is our second bill, because we also have SB 1324, which is this bill with the ballot images. And the part that will address audits and verification is going to be called SB 16602, or 1602 is what it is, SB. And it just came out today, and the final part of that bill will be addressed and rewritten within 2 weeks is our limit, because it's out for public discussion.
If these two
And
bills,
then, of course, we got things going on in other places. We're waiting for the appellate courts to give a decision to make ballot images a public record. I don't think they will. I think they're going to hold off because they know we got bills in the hopper, and they don't want to make a decision if the legislators are going to do something on it. So they'll wait to see what they do.
if you get these
Go ahead.
two bills, John, if you get these two bills through the Arizona legislature, will they stand as models for how we want to conduct elections in the rest of the country?
Yes, and that's why we've released the bills to SOG for their input. We're trying to unite and find unity in our industry by bringing in verified voting, the Brennan Center for Justice, Common Cause, because if this bill passes by April, we're going to be working it all over the country. We're going for some big block grants, and we're going to go out there and do what we do. We go out there, investigate, educate, agitate, and litigate only if necessary. And we do all of this with love in our heart and conviction.
Well, listen, we'll hope you'll get money in your treasury as well. So if we
Yeah, we
get
do
state
too.
laws in Arizona that are passed, that are on the books, that we can take around the rest of the country to guarantee free, fair, verifiable elections, and marked
Yes.
paper ballots with digital ballot images that are archived, that's
Yeah.
going to change everything, right?
It's going to change everything in the sense that we have elections, folks, that we don't have a Wizard of Oz coming out and giving us the results. You can check yourself. Maybe we'll have more people voting because it's real. Maybe better people will run for office because they think they got a chance, okay? Rather than being told that the system is rigged, okay? And,
Wow, that's fantastic.
I tell people this is my new saying is, in elections, transparency is the currency of trust. And without it, our democracy will die in darkness like it's doing right now. And,
So
just to add to one thing, I'm an environmentalist originally. I only got into this because I knew that we couldn't fix the environment till we fixed this. But over the weekend, I heard a devastating report about the lungs of this planet, which is the Amazon, and what has happened in the last 6 years, that maybe it's no longer the lungs
Yes,
because
well,
of the temperature
just had-
raise there. It's awful.
and
We're
thankfully,
running out of time.
thankfully, we just had an election in Amazon in Brazil, where maybe that will change. And the guy Bolsonaro is apparently, now living in Orlando. But the Lula, who came in there by virtue of a close election, but where election protection was a factor, is hopefully going to make the differences. So, John, we are forming the Alliance for Grassroots Democracy. Number one is preserving the elections and making them transparent. If we have bipartisan bills coming out of the Arizona legislature that are certified and on the record, that is certifying hand-marked, digitally scanned, permanently archived paper ballots, that's gonna really level the playing field, and that is a huge deal. So we want to thank you for that.
And I also want to shout out to my partner, of course, Susan Pinshaw and Ray Lutz and a lot of the people and a lot of people on this call, because if by April we pull this off and I can get the block grant, I will be hopefully out there looking not to have people join my group. I want to help you form your group. Okay.
Yeah,
I really do believe that we have to, be Margaret Meters. A few committed citizens can change the world. In fact, the only thing ever has. I want to build a horizontal organization, not a vertical. We're there to inspire. We're there to advise, give you counsel, and teach you how to be effective.
Well, listen, you've been incredible. We all have to understand that if it wasn't for the work that was done with John and Ray Lutz and others in Arizona, Arizona would have gone the other way, which would have been very. We'd have Kerry Lake as governor, God forbid, of Arizona. So this is a very big deal. And as I say, in the newly formed Alliance for Grassroots Democracy, number one issue is to use what you've done now in Arizona, get that through the legislature. It's going to be a huge step up for the whole movement for grassroots democracy in this country. So keep us posted on that. It's fantastic.
I will, and I will be leaning on you and people in this group, because it is a campaign. If this bill was to pass, at least the first one, if not both, to take them nationally, because my God, this planet, our country needs elections that we all can believe in, and that we can walk away from a ballot box knowing that it's real, because we're going to check it in the next week or so, through good verification.
Do us a favor, post in the chat whatever links you can to these two bills, so people can see them and start putting, certainly in places like Michigan now, Wisconsin, other states where, Pennsylvania, certainly the New England states where we have grassroots Minnesota, where we have an attorney general. These bills are going to be critical. So if you'll put the links in the chat, that would be
do that.
Thank you, John. Justin LeBlanc.
And I thank everybody out there who's worked for this. It's just not me. I wear a button and it says "Be the We," and it's purple. And that means I took the red and the blue and I mixed it together. I'll tell you another quickie. Okay. We had our Democratic Party organization this last weekend, and the governor, Hobbs, was pushing another guy, which by chance I'm suing, okay? He's on the board of supervisors, okay? And I'm going, oh my God, thank God I ever say he's bad to him, but I wish it was this other lady, because she's so much better. She was vice chair. She really does the work. Fontes endorsed her, and she won 70 to 30%.
Remember, actually, people, the grassroots pro-democracy movement elected in this last election, we elected the Secretary of State in Arizona. He won, for God's sakes. Fuentes is his name, right? I met him. Fontes. I met him in LA. Very nice guy. So this is a big deal. Here's a concept for you. We actually have a Secretary of State in a major state, Arizona, who believes in democracy. What a concept. And this guy understands, and I assume he's supporting your bills.
He's one of my first Democrats to endorse it last year. And, we go back, me and his family go back 45 years. That's how long I've known them.
And we have had on this call, on the Zoom call a few months ago, the leading Republican Ken Bennett, who also John helped John formulate this. So it's a huge success story, and we have now a year and a half with the Alliance for Grassroots Democracy to make this nationwide. So John, keep coming on the calls, if you will.
I will. And I'm glad that it didn't pass last session, because it would have passed with a Republican governor. It would have passed with a House run only by Republicans voting for it, a Senate with only Republicans, and the bill would have come out of Arizona looking like a crazy mega bill.
So
I need both parties. I need a purple. I need a purple bill.
Okay, excellent. That's great. Justin
So it's
LeBlanc.
better that it's happening this way.
Justin, and then Dorothy, and then we'll go to Wendy. Go ahead, Justin.
So congratulations to all the grassroots efforts that resulted in a lot of success this round. I wanted to ask John what his plans are to extend it from the state level to the county and city levels, especially where a lot of these elections rules and certifications are decided, because essentially, you know, if we want to keep grassroots hope alive, it's got to come at a local level, not just a statewide umbrella level, you know.
Go ahead.
You're right. We have to go into that state, be able to have money to buy op-eds, to hire staff, people knocking on doors. We have to be able to take the damn democracy back to we the people. And the only way it's going to work if they can believe it's real, because most people don't, and I don't either. I believe in what I'm doing to make it that way, okay? And it's on those levels, but it does need to happen two ways, either through, three ways. Convince the Secretary of State to enforce the law. Good luck on that, huh? And especially in a rogue state like Massachusetts, or I want to sue Massachusetts. I want to get back into Michigan really bad. They're destroying images there because they think it's going to cause long lines. And that's craziness. Something's really wrong when they tell you that. In Massachusetts, they say, we're not saving them because it would be illegal. So we turned that off on the device. So our machine doesn't create an image.
So you're talking about preserving digital images of
yeah, they destroy them. Because
Sluggo, we got 10 minutes left in this segment.
Okay, yeah, we got to keep going here. Dorothy Reich, and then we're going to go to Wendy. Thank you. Dorothy, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that the progressives took over the Arizona Democratic Party. They elected the chair and all 13 members now. They won 10 elections out of 10, and all 13 members now, I believe, are progressives. So that's a huge win, and you can thank PDA for that.
Thank you, Dorothy. Yes, our very own Dan O'Neill, who's been on here, who's worked with John Brakey, another Arizona champion for democracy, small d and big D. There was an incredible grassroots organizing effort to bring democracy to the Democratic Party in Arizona, joining the state of Washington, joining the state of Nevada, and hopefully very soon the state of Florida. We'll be talking about that in an upcoming.
That's next. So we're going to go to Florida now. Wendy Lederman. You know, we have our correspondent in an actual fascist state. Wendy, John, fantastic. Wendy, can you tell us what's going on in Florida parallel to Arizona, please?
Thank you. Yes, fascism in action for sure. And Carolina Impudia is she's trying to get on right now. She's a dear friend of mine who just recently stepped down as the Progressive Caucus state chair of the Progressive Caucus after calling for the resignation of Manny Diaz, who was the Democratic Party state chair for his oh, I see Carolina, I think, is here, but she's under my name as Wendy Lederman, because she had my link. So Carolina, if you want to change the name, and you can hop in the conversation, because she actually just announced her bid for to take the place of Manny Diaz to be the chair of the Democratic Party, because there was so much neglect and dereliction of duty when it came to the elections. I mean, we already know it's very tough to get Democrats and the left to activate in elections that aren't for the presidency, you know, for the down ballot races. There's Carolina, wonderful. And so, yeah, we just basically, like, I'm in one of the most Cuban cities in the entire country, and there were no signs whatsoever for Charlie Crist. We had Nikki Fried kind of splitting the Democratic vote in the primaries. We had DeSantis going on tour for the education races, which are supposed to be bipartisan, and he was going around giving $1,000 to each candidate and endorsing them. And there was no opposition against that. And what ended up happening is that they overturned all of the school boards. And now you see what's happening with all, like, books being illegal, and teachers can get arrested for having personal libraries that are unvetted. You have elected leaders that are being fired, even though he's beyond his jurisdiction. And one huge point that just, we have the United States of amnesia and Florida of amnesia, where almost a year ago, DeSantis just decided to, like, make his own district maps. He's just like, we in our state, I mean, he's just like, yeah, sure, no, I want these. I'm the king now. We have a process where
instead of gerrymandering, it's now Ronnie mandering.
Ronnie mandering, exactly. So we have a legislature is supposed to provide the maps, because we gained a seat in this in the Congress. So the legislature draws the maps that are supposed to be typically status quo, and then they're sent to the state Supreme Court for congressional review. And that happened. And the court's like, yeah, cool, like, these maps are good. And then DeSantis is like, no, I don't like them. And so it happened again. And finally, he's just like, I'm gonna make my own maps. And instead of having I think it was like 11 Democratic seats and 16 Republican seats. We're at 20 Republican seats and 8 Democratic seats, and nobody is saying anything. And so I'm going to pass it off to Carolina and let her speak, because she's we're very, very excited for her excellent leadership, and hopefully she gets elected as the state chair, because we could have some true progressive blood making a difference in the state and then the rest of the country, because we see that DeSantis is preparing for the White House, which personally terrifies me more than a lot of what else we've seen, because he's so quick to make his own rules. Thanks, Carolina.
I want to point out that Lorenzo is on with us as well. So we will obviously go past the first hour into the second hour talking about politics. We will be joined by Linda Seeley from San Luis Obispo, and we'll get later in the second hour, we'll get into Diablo Canyon. But this is a lot to cover here from Florida and then from Peru. Lorenzo, you'll be glad to know that you're now known on our calls as the Peru guy.
Thanks to Jeffrey. And sorry to interrupt, but just real quick, also we have Joe Benasia here from the Florida Rights and Nature on the Right to Clean Water Amendment, which is the Green Amendment, to amend the state constitution to give rights to people to have clean water. And it's being replicated in other states as well, where it changes the people's power, and it gives power to the people over the legislature. So hopefully we'll.
Yeah. Well, let me very quickly, thank you for that. Let me very quickly tell our listeners at Progressive Radio Network, if you're listening to us Thursday night, it's just about 6 o'clock in New York. And we will continue another hour at least with this discussion. We're going to go into the environment. We're going to talk more about Florida and then Peru. So stay with us. If you need to switch over, this is archived at the GRASSROOTSEP.org website, where you can go hear the rest of our discussion, which will carry through the top of the hour. So thank you, PRN listeners, for listening in. And for the rest of this, go to GRASSROOTSEP.org. Thank you, Mike Hirsch and Steve Caruso, for engineering this. And we're going to continue. I will remind people, we will not meet on President's Day in the middle of February. And we're also, at the end of February, going to be switching our link to a different Zoom system, and we'll keep you posted on that. But in the meanwhile, it's status quo. Carolina, before we jump to you, I want to give Ruth Strauss a chance. She's got her hand up. She's a fellow Southerner from Alabama. But go ahead, Ruth. You got for us?
I think everybody knows, but and probably most of all Wendy, but everybody, that the Democratic Party did nothing to help Florida. and you know, like Val Demings should have gotten a seat. I mean, it's really criminal. Like they say, you know, with friends like that, who needs enemies? Does anybody have any idea what we can do, you know, besides voting the bums out, which may not be that easy, although we're doing well? I mean, they just completely ignored Florida, and look what happened.
Exactly. And, you know, both Republican candidates for the presidency in 24, with now counting Trump and DeSantis, are going to be from Florida. So, Carolina, what you're doing in response to Ruth is trying to become the leader of the Democratic Party in Florida. We are nonpartisan, but this is a grassroots uprising. So maybe you should take over the Republican Party as well. But go ahead, Carolina, and tell us what you're doing.
That would be nice, no? Thank you for having me. And it's really, again, a pleasure to be with all of you. As you guys know, we've been talking about the issues affecting Florida for a very long time. And progressives have been at the forefront at calling all of these issues, but at the same time, researching about solutions for those issues. So the transition from not having a chair that was doing anything came actually pretty easy at some point. Not that we have won or anything. I actually don't think that we have the votes, to be honest, but we're working on that. And what we want to do also is to call attention to the issues. Like Ruth was saying, there's a lot going on. Actually, we consider that the party is broken and that we have to really start from the bottom. And this is where the reason for the campaign came. We were not even just considering running. We were trying to find solutions for the issues that the party is facing. And in that process, it became really clear that the candidates that were throwing their hat in are the people that are, some of them, responsible of the party being in the situation where it is, but also they're the same. There's no difference between what we had with what we would have if they are elected. So we threw our hat. And I say we because I'm not me only. I'm part of a large movement of progressives and people that are concerned about what's going on with our state and where it's leading us and how this affects the everyday people and people mostly from the working class in a state that now surpasses the 50% of poverty rate and really lives in a state of oppression where we need voices that are really ready to get out on the work. So it makes sense that if we need to rebuild the party, we start rebuilding it with people that have been building movement for the longest time. And that's the progressive people. And I'm very happy and honored that I get to do this. It is also kind of frustrating because the party has a lot of restrictions in their bylaws, and there's only certain group of people that are able to run even for this position. So I took the chance because of that, and I'm very excited to be doing this with them. There's a lot of things that we can do, and we are the only group that has an actual platform. I emailed it to you, Wendy, so you can share. And if you see my name over here, it has also the link to our Facebook page, and you can find also some of our plans and solutions that we have put together so that we can fix this state. And hopefully with that, we can attract people to invest in elections in Florida and trust that there's a lot of people working for change over here, and that we are doing our best so that our party transforms from just a party that is winning or hoping to win elections, but actually into a party that it's in actual service and constant service to the people. Identifying the needs of the community is one thing, but also working with the community so that those can become realities, and also to uplift people in the community who are already fighting for those changes, so that we can really build a bench made of organizers and empowering people. So if you have any question, I'll be very happy to answer. But again, thank you so much for having me here. And it's such a pleasure. And please push for us also. And if you can, go to that page. There's links for endorsements. We want to hear from everyone in the progressive community all around the country, and build an even stronger progressive coalition so that we can get this done.
Very good, very good. Thank you. Someone has commented on your background there. It looks like a map of Miami on acid, but it's great to have you with us, and great to really hear of your efforts there. Leslie, then Wendy, and then you want to go to your other organizer from Florida. We're joined by Kevin Camps. Kevin is the expert from Nuclear Information Resource Service in Michigan. I mean, from Beyond Nuclear. Kevin, we will be talking about nuclear in a few minutes, if you'll stick with us, especially about Palisades and Diablo Canyon. Wendy, go ahead. We have Leslie Roberts with a hand, but you want to call on her first, and then we'll give it back to you.
Thank you. I was just going to ask Carolina, because I know that she was having endorsements in Florida. So I don't know if there's anyone in Florida that's on the call that wants to give her an endorsement, or if she can take endorsements from outside, if that's possible. Not money, but just, if there's a way that people can follow you that way and outside the call be able to follow up. Thank you. And sorry, Leslie, appreciate you. Thanks.
Yes,
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm dropping my link on the chat. Please make sure that you follow over there, and you're going to see that one of the comments that it's pinned to the page is for endorsements. We're not taking money. We only want support and to show how strong the movement is, not only in Florida, but also throughout the country, and how we actually are going to build a bigger, better movement that is going to help all of the country, all of the people in this country, and not just think of corporations and we need to bring money so that we can win elections, when we have the people so that we can win elections.
Good.
I heard from Tom Hartman that the GOP is investing and taking over a lot of radio programs in Spanish, so that they're conditioning the Spanish speaking only people to vote for GOP. Are we doing anything on that side?
Absolutely right. And they're not only doing that with radio, but also with TV. The two main stations, Telemundo and Univision, they are mostly right wing. So we have a lot to do. And what we are is not afraid of getting out there and working.
Great, absolutely. Wendy, did you want to go to Joseph Bonacia?
Benasia, yeah, I think it's Benasia. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I just want to say, Carolina, I've known her for years. She's an amazing leader. She's just fantastic. She's the real deal. Thank you so much. And thank you, Harvey. Yeah, Joe Benasia is with us, and he's an amazing leader as well. We have the Florida Right to Clean and Healthy Water ballot amendment that is we're trying to trigger a constitutional review by March 1st, but it's just such a powerful piece that could really just do so much for all the troubles that you guys have heard me talk about in the waters in Florida, but it would set the precedent for everywhere. So thank you so much, Joe. Really appreciate you being here.
Sure. Thank you. Yep. Hello, everybody. Good to be here. So very quickly, this is what you need to know. Water conditions down here in Florida are terrible. We've got 1,000 springs, 80% of them are polluted. Lake Okeechobee is famously polluted. We've got wild blue-green algae blooms and red tides, dying manatees. Seagrass beds are on the verge of the spiral deathbed. So We are going to do what has been done in Pennsylvania, Montana, and most recently in New York. We want to provide all Floridians with a fundamental constitutional right to clean and healthy waters. This is up there in the Bill of Rights section of our Constitution. It is a fundamental right, which means that it would take precedence over the permitted rights that our state gives to polluters and to property owners and developers and such. It is also indefeasible. I love that word. That means that it cannot be overturned, it cannot be altered or compromised by our state legislature. Down here in Florida, we've had success with citizens' initiatives, only to have their intent compromised by the state legislature afterwards. So that cannot happen with this. The people who wrote this language were very, very smart. They anticipated that we'd have lots of challenges. It took a long, long time to write the language for this amendment. Principally, it would help us light years to overcome the undue influence that special interests have in environmental policy in Florida. Two quick examples. 2 years ago, we did something absolutely historic in Orange County. 89% of the voters there passed a right to clean water, rights of nature amendment. It became the largest jurisdiction in the country to do so. Within 2 months that it was put on the ballot, even before Floridians had the right to vote on it, the state legislature swooped in and preempted the authority of local governments to pass such laws. They were successful in snuffing out similar citizens' initiatives in other counties. That's why we have upped the ante, and we are going to go over their heads to amend the Constitution. Clean water is absolutely fundamental to everybody, particularly, I wouldn't say particularly here in Florida, but so much of our economy, so much of our quality of life is dependent upon it. We merit this fundamental right. It would be a game changer for us down here. A few years ago, I'm sure everybody heard about Piney Point, that environmental disaster. If this amendment had been on the books, we could have prevented that, very likely have prevented that, because years before, the Army Corps of Engineers had predicted that if the DEP went ahead and issued a permit for further use of the facility, there would be a breach in that liner and all hell would break out, and that's exactly what did happen. We also have lost more wetlands than any other state in the country, 9.3 million acres, and we are still destroying them. I got folks who want to destroy mixed wetlands and uplands behind my house after we just got our butts kicked with Hurricane Ian. This is still a consideration. This is an amendment that can sort of draw a line and say, enough is enough. No more unsustainable development, no more developing destruction of wetlands.
Great.
Yes.
Will you put it in the chat? Can you put it in the link so that people can see the wording of this amendment?
Wendy, can you do that?
I just
Yes,
did.
you did.
Thank you so much. Thanks,
All
Joe.
right, thank you, Wendy. Thank you for that. Joseph, thank you. There's a hand here. Eric Lazarus, did you want to ask a question? I got to unmute you. Sorry. Go ahead now.
Hey, yes. Here's my question, and it's particularly to the former chair of the Progressive Caucus. Although any Floridians will know more than I do about this. I'm wondering about the idea of having a lottery where anyone who gets arrested for voting and still having some outstanding fees that you're supposed to pay could actually not only get their legal bills and those fees paid, but actually the idea that wealthy Democrats and the rest of us could put money in so that money would be divided up by those people who got arrested for voting. Is anybody thinking about anything like this? It's been on my mind. I'm Eric.
Okay, thank you. Joseph, Wendy?
I think Bloomberg came across with a lot of money in order to do that. Maybe Wendy knows better than I do. I'm not 100% positive, but that sounds likely.
Actually, Colin Kaepernick, the former quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, has started a fund of where people who are harmed by police can sue. I believe that I understand that right. I have to look into that. But he put up money for some kind of legal fund for people who are harmed in some way. Wendy, do you know more about it?
And I was looking at the chat, and Joe, if you want to check the chat with what Dennis just wrote, and we can connect more later. But yeah, I know there's one group, and I'm trying to it's escaping my mind right now, but it's just really working on at least just getting redemption for the people that that lost their right to vote, and just really like working on that whole issue. But yeah, there was like a lot of, and like with a lot of our other ballot amendments that have happened, it has to do with like semantics. And so what happened with the people with the right to vote that were arrested, I mean, they had to go through the state to do it, but technically they weren't, like, they were convicted of particular felonies that weren't counted. So it's a good question. I'll try to find the link for the group that's working with the people that lost their right and gained it back again, because I did actually work on that amendment, and it was a really good one, and it's an old Jim Crow thing. So anyway,
Good, thank you. Good point. Good point. I want to let you, Kevin, I see you're outside. Kevin Camps, we will get to you. We're going to talk a bit about Peru, and then we'll come to the nuke thing. I hope you can stay with us, okay? It looks like you're in a good place there. Kevin, thanks. Okay, Ron Leonard has a hand, and then we're going to go to Peru, to Lorenzo Canizares. Lorenzo, thank you for staying with us. Ron Leonard, did you want to jump in here?
Just to mention, good old Bloomberg kicked in $16 million in 2020 to help Florida felons pay fines, and that's in the chat.
That's right. So that was a situation where the people of Florida voted overwhelmingly in a referendum to, good for you, Steve, thank you for that, voted overwhelmingly in a referendum to allow ex-felons to vote, and the state legislature jumped in and demanded they pay fines, which they were undefined, as I recall, before they could actually vote. And so Bloomberg, right, Ron, Bloomberg kicked in 16 million? Now, well, good for Bloomberg, fantastic. So, but the state legislature is completely out of control in Florida. It is very much a fascist organization, being led by essentially, a guy who's burning books in the libraries, and it's really, really a bad situation. Wendy, did you want to jump in on that real quick?
Thank you. Good eye. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say it ties in what we were just talking about with Carolina and what Joe mentioned, because we actually had Chuck O'Neill on a few months back. We've had him a couple of times. He was the Rights in Nature guy that promoted the ordinance in Orange County that got 89% of the vote. I mean, come on, like what more do you want? And then the same legislature that took away the rights to felons and preempted their right are the same ones that preempted the Rights in Nature movement, that are, again, firing elected officials. So it's a broader picture of just the usurpation of democracy and taking away the rights of people. And so that's why this amendment is so important, because it takes back that right to the people, and that can go in any state, constitutional amendments. But that also just goes to show the danger of this particular administration that we have, that really is like a monarchy type tyrannical rule that has no regard for democracy and the will of the people. So just weaving that together. Thank you.
So folks might want to know that there are initiatives to do the same thing in New Mexico, and even more so up in Maine, where the legislature is on board with this, at least more and more. So instead of going through the citizens initiative and having to get hundreds of thousands of signed petitions, is going through the legislature. And Maya Van Rossum, who was the founder of the Green Amendments movement in the nation, was down here for a couple of weeks. She's working in New Mexico. She's been working up in Maine, New York, and she's working with us as well.
Thank you. Ron, did you want to say something further? Then we go to Leslie.
I just wanted to ask Joseph if there was any question to the EPA on speedies permits on all these polluters. There can be a review. What has the federal government done for you, if anything?
The problem is, a big problem is once permits are issued, there's very little that can be done. Most recently, the EPA has been looking at what Florida is doing. They said you guys are not meeting water quality standards. You have to improve them. But Florida is famous for not meeting water quality standards. And that is what a fundamental right will give us the ability to do. Courts can compel the executive state branch and its agencies to protect our fundamental right. They do not have the discretion to disregard the Constitution.
If you look at reservoir.org, which is the fight I had decades ago on New York City not filing a speedies permit, we renegotiated the actual federal Clean Water Act, and maybe you could do the same in Florida.
You guys should be in touch, Joseph and Blanes and Ron. If you'll exchange contacts in the chat, that would be great. We're going Leslie, Tatanka, and then we're going to go to talk about Peru, please. Leslie and then Tatanka, go ahead. Leslie, are you unmuted? No.
Thank you. Yeah, just a couple of talks ago, we were talking about Jim Crow laws when we were talking about people in Florida not being able to vote. Please look at the 13th Amendment and the 15th Amendment. They are Jim Crow laws. The 13th Amendment, there is forced labor for people that are felons. The 15th Amendment deprives voting of people who are felons. These are Jim Crow laws. They must be changed.
Very good.
It used to be that the prisons could send the felons to their old masters to go work for free.
Right.
These are the freed slaves. But now it's corporations that are in there having people work for them. And they can get something in some states like only earn $20 or $25 a month. And where does that leave all their families if the breadwinner of the house is only making $25? And, and is there job training when these corporations come in? Are they going to hire them afterwards?
Thank you, Leslie. Good points. Very good. Thank you. Tatanka, and then we're going to go to Lorenzo and talk about Peru. This has been a great discussion on Florida. Thank you, Wendy, for bringing in Joseph and Lorenzo and Carolina. And we want to keep in touch with this. Tatanka, go ahead.
Thank you, Wendy, for your guests. They're fantastic. I just wanted to say that Colin Kaepernick has given money largely to grassroots groups. Speaking, working on racial justice, he did form a legal defense initiative about 2 years ago, but it was specifically in Minneapolis to help people who needed legal resources to fight racial injustice. I don't know if he has something national. That's all.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Tatanka. Okay, thank you again for this Florida segment. We've been in Arizona and Florida. We're now going to go to the 51st state, which is Peru. Lorenzo, if you will tell us what's going on down there, we'd greatly appreciate it. I got to unmute you here. Where'd you go?
Okay.
Okay, you're good. Yeah.
Okay. It's hardly happening that Peru is going to become the 51st state. As a matter of fact, looking at the reaction to our press to what's going on in Peru should give us an indication of how critical that situation in Peru is about. Today, the New York Times, nothing. The Wall Street Journal has an article by Maria Anastasia O'Grady, which is a famous right-wing, to the right of the right wing, columnist on in the Wall Street Journal, where she's blaming the Cubans for what's going on in Peru. Now, yeah, the Cubans are bringing all those people from the mountains down to Lima. What's happening today, why it's so relevant, is that today started a national strike. A national strike of farmers and let me see, I wrote it down.
There's a national strike in Peru to oppose the overturning of the government. Is that right?
They are opposed to overturning the government of Pedro Castillo, the guy who was deposed on December 7th of last year. And
Exactly.
since then have been over 60 people have died from the police and the army. And today, the Federation of Coffee Growers and Farmers of Peru went on a strike, on a national strike. Looking at the news through the other side of the internet, I noticed that already is being said that there is a loss of revenues from exporters. Sincerely, I can tell you that I don't believe this government has much chance to survive. That there's going to be a change in the government. I don't know what that change will mean, because there doesn't seem to be any leading party or any leading organization doing the political bidding. Now people are demanding that Pedro Castillo be left out of jail, and Pedro Castillo was the democratically elected president of Peru, and Pedro Castillo represents the Peruvian people. I really do think that it's very important to look at the Peruvian situation with the eyes of people that are participating in that struggle. And a few days ago, the CELAC conference, I don't know how you say that in English, the CELAC conference in Argentina finished, and there was almost total support. I say almost because I don't know what is exactly if there was anybody that opposed the Peruvian people, like Chile, who is considered social democrat, kind of soft happening in regards to the other groups like Bolivia, Cuba, Venezuela, Mexico. Even Chile is supporting the Peruvian government very strongly. Now, the thing is that what is important to all of us, and I do believe that what's happening in Peru has tremendous consequences for the whole world. Already having it, we can see in the CELAC conference. What is happening is that, and I finished the article that, by the way, thank you, Stephen, for putting the article in the chat. I finished my article by saying the victory of the popular forces in Peru will be a victory for the whole of humanity, a major step to a more just and better world. And I stand by that 150%, because it seems to me that what's happening in Peru is probably the most important struggle going on have become so important because they have a chance of winning. There is a lot of other important struggles going on around the world, but this is a one that people have a real good chance of winning. And it's the most important because it has the chance to give a major blow to white supremacy. And white supremacy, in my opinion, of the schemes of around the world, which is I believe they are behind every negative thing in this world. White supremacy takes a knockout punch. It would be it would make a much better world, a much just world. The Peruvian people, and just to conclude my little spiel.
Is that a Peruvian word, spiel?
Huh? Oh, brother, I was raised in New York City, so imagine. Even though I didn't go to Baruch College, I played volleyball there. The thing is that what's happening in Peru has the potential. I mean, in Latin America already is having a tremendous effect, because white supremacy is not just in Alabama. I mean, it's all over the southern hemisphere too, and we, because of whatever historical circumstances, too long of to discuss that, but because of the history and the development of relationships and all that, we might have a little bit ahead. But the bestiality, the criminality, what we saw in Bolivia when they had the coup, and the killing of indigenous people in Bolivia, what we're seeing now in Peru is an indication of the problem. We're seeing that in Ecuador too. So this is a very important fight that is going on all over the world, and it's affecting Latin America, Brazil. Now also there is all kinds of reports of how the indigenous people have been mistreated and being killed because of all of this. Is white supremacy, as most of us should know, is just a tool of the greed machine. I call it greed machine. All those corporations that come together and to exploit and take the world.
Right. Yeah, so we're not getting any other news from Peru. It is amazing that it's been completely blacked out in the American media. Even the left media, and the left media is talking a lot about Ukraine, and they're not even talking there about the nuclear reactors, which Kevin Camps is going to fill us in on. But Lorenzo, I hope you'll come back with us every week and keep us filled in on what's happening in Peru, because I agree with you 100%, as I'm sure everybody on this call agrees. This is a very big deal, what's going on in Peru, and nobody is talking about it up here in North America. And I hope that if the democracy can be restored in Peru, that you'll bring the movement up and restore it in Florida as well. It'd be a big deal. So thank you for that. Does anyone want to ask Lorenzo anything directly before we move on to nuclear stuff? Jeffrey, really quickly, do you have something directly on Peru? Okay.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, very quickly, Jeffrey, please.
Okay, I wanted to ask this question since last week. Can I ask? Is the Peruvian government committing crimes against democracy? And to be sure what you know what that means, I'm going to send you this in the chat box.
Okay. Obviously, they overthrew the duly elected president and put him in jail. And I guess you've got 2 ex-presidents in jail in Peru now. Fujimori is also in jail, but this guy should not be in jail, the one they threw out. So, Lorenzo, will you keep coming back and give us updates?
Yeah, let me just add to what our friend just said. It's very important to realize that as it was used in Brazil and it's being used now in Peru, it was used in Brazil to depose Dilma Rousseff, and also it's been used in Peru to depose Pedro Castillo. And it's a term that I believe it was coined by the people from the Brennan Center, and it's lawfare. They are waging lawfare, and they are waging lawfare here in the United States too. That's one of the things that Steve Bannon is specializing on, and being able to utilize all these tools that are provided by loopholes in our democratic system.
Okay.
And so that's the same case in Peru. And
Thank you.
Thank you. I will be here next week.
Please.
And I hope I will have good news, Harvey. I will hope that I'll have good
All right,
news.
we hope so too. And maybe we can send Ron DeSantis down there, and there'll be three guys in prison. and thank you for that very much. Justin, very quickly, then we're going to go to Kevin Camps and open our discussion of the nuclear issues, and then to Ron Leonard talk about renewable technologies. Dorothy and Justin, you have hands very quickly. Justin and Dorothy, please. Justin, real quick.
So to dovetail these two issues, Lorenzo, you mentioned in your articles about oligarchs, and you know there's lots of ways that oligarchs use laws and courts and various political systems against the working class, and that's really what's happening even in the energy sector around the world too. They're clamping down, trying to protect their political power through the energy power as well. So I think we're going to get a lot of great discussion there.
Great, thank you for that.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you for that. Dorothy, I'm unmuting you. There you go. Go ahead, Dorothy. Now we can't hear you. Oh, you're muted again. You're muting yourself, I think. We can't hear you, Dorothy. There. There's something wrong where Dorothy, you're muted. There.
All right. So first of all, if you want to find out what's going on in Peru, if you Google Peru news, you're going to get information. I just sent out this morning an article from the Guardian about Peru. And I just wanted to get Lorenzo's comment on how the vice president became so compromised, because she was a left-wing person also. She was no right-winger when she ran as the president's vice president. They ran together for
David
one
Wasserman Schultz also was a left-winger.
She was not, so she just pretended.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
That is
Okay,
exactly
well, that's what we need to know, because that's not how she's being portrayed in the media here.
I just want to segue into and remind everybody that who's the crazy woman from Georgia?
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is looking to become the new Sarah Palin. She wants to be vice president under Trump. So there we go. Another vice president syndrome. Thank you for that, Dorothy. Thank you, Lorenzo. Amazing report. We'll be with you next week, please. We're going to jump into energy now real quick. There has been a mind-boggling development. Kevin Camps, you're now outside in the dark, but you're still visible. So unmuting you. We've had a mind-boggling development at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, where there's actually talk of not extending the license for Diablo Canyon. If you could talk about that, and then about what's happening in Palisades, the nuclear plant there, that'd be great. Then we're going to go to Ron Leonard and talk about battery technology. But go ahead, Kevin Camps from Beyond Nuclear.
Sure, yeah. I mean, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has very Byzantine processes, and it's very rare that they ever rule in the public interest. It's almost always in the corporate interest, of course. And in this particular case, it may sound good that they have told Pacific Gas and Electric that the original license extension application from many years ago that had been relinquished because PG&E started an agreement process with the labor unions, local municipalities, several environmental groups, and by 2016 had hammered out a shutdown agreement. This was initiated by Pacific Gas and Electric. They had given up on extending the license beyond 40 years out to 60. They gave up. They relinquished that license extension application. And now that Governor
let me
Newsom
clarify,
has,
this is for Diablo, Kevin, this is for Diablo Canyon, the 2 nuclear reactors at San Luis Obispo that we have had a general agreement to shut next year in 2024, Unit 1, 2025, Unit 2. As you're saying, PG&E had given up on the license. Now, Governor Newsom wants to extend the licenses, but there's some detail at the NRC. And you go ahead now and tell us what's happened.
So PG&E in a complete reversal, fueled by a $1.4 billion gift from Newsom and the California state legislature in the form of a bailout. And they're also seeking a Department of Energy $1.1 billion bailout that has been awarded. The money hasn't flowed yet. So that's a grand total now of $2.5 billion. PG&E has reversed itself and asked the NRC to simply restart its license extension application from many years ago. And what Harvey was asking about is NRC said, no, we're not going to do that. Sounds like a victory, right? NRC will find a way. I mean, just look at Indian Point, New York. The licenses at Indian Point, New York, some years ago, expired amidst the license extension proceeding. And the NRC said, oh, Entergy, you're such good corporate citizens, and you applied in good faith really late in the game to extend these licenses. And then the state of New York got in the way, and these pesky citizens got in the way, and it took so much time. We're just going to let you keep operating on expired licenses at Indian Point. And the good news there is those reactors have shut. They're probably not coming back. But at Diablo, they've reversed themselves on shutting down. They've asked for, the rules to be broken by the NRC. NRC said nope. But NRC will find a way. They always do. So we're going to have to stay vigilant. At Palisades in Michigan, it's similar to the Diablo Canyon story. The new owner, Holtec, has asked for $1 billion or more from the feds. They were denied that last November. We thought we were done, but nope, they're going to apply again as we speak for that $1 billion from the feds or more. They're going to apply for $1 billion or more from the state of Michigan. Again, $2.5 billion to restart a closed reactor, which has never happened anywhere in the world. So most times when you close a reactor, that's good enough, it's closed. At Palisades, we closed it last May. The previous owner closed it. Then we closed it again when the Department of Energy denied the bailout last November. And here they come again. We're going to have to deny it. We're going to have to close it a third time. So that's that situation. I'll just real quickly say that we just got ruled against by the second highest court in the land on a high-level radioactive waste dump in Texas. So that was a shocking ruling from the DC Circuit Court of Appeals. We'll keep fighting. The good news is we have the state of Texas on our side, if you can believe that. We face a similar dump in New Mexico. We have the state of New Mexico on our side. So as Nevada has shown at Yucca Mountain for 4 decades, as Utah showed at private fuel storage at Skull Valley Goshutes Indian Reservation, if states fight these things, they can stop these companies. They can stop the federal government. That's our hope at these locations. It's a majority Latin American area, impoverished, polluted. That's where they've targeted these 2 dumps at. They're within 40 miles of each other. It's for all the waste in the country and then double that amount. That's how much they want to put out there, triple that amount. That's going on there. Harvey mentioned Ukraine. I mean, Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is a global catastrophe waiting to happen. I mean, 6 reactors. Russia's trying to grand theft nuclear, steal a 6-reactor nuclear power plant that belongs to Ukraine. And the shells are falling, the missiles are falling. There's frontline combat in the vicinity, and it's not just Zaporizhzhia, it's a number of other nuclear power plants in that country, but Zaporizhzhia is still on the front line, I mean, in the middle of it. So anything could happen there. The only good news is the reactors have been shut down for several months now. They're quite cooled down, but you have all the high-level radioactive waste that site has ever generated, most of it in indoor wet storage pools, which if they lose their cooling water, they're not even inside radiological containment. So Zelensky had it right back in March when the Russian military first took the plant, that they had risked a Chernobyl ×6. Only given how much waste is in those pools, it's really more like Chernobyl times dozens or times scores. So we're just living with our breath held, living on borrowed time, praying that the worst doesn't happen at Zaporizhzhia or Melnitsky or Rivne or Chernobyl. But, just to add to the absurdity, the Ukrainian government itself has just doubled down on nuclear power, saying they need to build new ones. So it's a whole new dimension of madness over there, including, the Ukrainian government wanting to build new reactors in their country. It's insane. So
it's beyond insane. And, I keep reading all these leftist arguments about Russia and Ukraine. NATO and who's really responsible. I mean, the number, the overwhelming issue that we have to deal with in Ukraine is the 6 reactors at Zaporizhia, the 9 other ones that are licensed to operate, and then the corpse of Chernobyl, which could still blow up. It's absolutely insane. Kevin, I do hope that we do have some kind of opening with the NRC here. And, you know, I got to mention also, and I have to show you my Kokopelli t-shirt today. I'll also tell you the good news that it's again raining in Los Angeles, which it has been so rare, but thank God we've got rain. But there is a trial about to start tomorrow, allegedly in Ohio, that really makes Alice in Wonderland look like a tome of truth. The Ohio legislature, and of course, nobody knows more about Davis-Besse than you do, the nuclear plant there, Kevin. The Ohio legislature was literally bought for $61 million. And nobody would have known except a single FBI agent came out and exposed it was a bribe to the Speaker of the House at the time, Larry Householder. And, he is actually being prosecuted. And they started a trial and they had to stop because one of the jurors got COVID. But tomorrow this may resume. And Steve, do you want to talk to us about this from Ohio? Steve Caruso?
Yeah, well, that trial's off because some of the jurors had COVID, and they're still waiting for test results and updates there. But that's about where household, we're still paying in Ohio for House Bill 6. So just because it was stolen and bought by the power companies, it still exists. It's still out there as a legal entity, which shouldn't be. I mean, that's what living under fascism is, I guess.
The ratepayers of the state of Ohio, because of this bill that was bought for $61 million from the Ohio legislature, everybody in Ohio is paying for Davis-Besse and Perry. Everybody in California is paying for Diablo Canyon. Everybody, whether you're in their service district or not. And here they screaming and yelling that rooftop solar forces people who don't have solar to pay for the grid, which is a ridiculous argument. At the same time, they're forcing me, I live in LA, I'm in the LA district, DWP, which is a muni, and I have to pay for Diablo Canyon, which if it blows up, is going to wipe out everything. And they're in Ohio, they have a literal bribe. In California, PG&E gave Gavin Newsom more than $200,000. In Ohio, in order to get $1 billion bailout for their 2 nuclear plants, they gave the legislature $61 million. And Steve just flashed, there was a very good discussion of this on Tom Hartman. If you can put the link in the chat from a guy from Ohio discussing this. You couldn't make this stuff up. It's unreal. Kevin, do you want to say anything else before we move on to Ron Leonard and renewables?
Just some breaking news from Appalachia, from Virginia, Irwin, Tennessee, Nuclear Fuel Services. Terry Lodge, the attorney, represents Irwin Citizens Action Network. It's a fuel facility for the U.S. nuclear Navy, highly enriched uranium, and they're dabbling in nuclear weapons enrichment uranium now. And just today I was on a call with him and he reported in real time that there was an explosion and casualties and ambulances at Nuclear Fuel Services just today. I don't have any more details, but there are these facilities all over the country. They're often having bad days, some days worse than others. So there's nuclear disasters in this country and around the world happening all the time.
Yes, it's really.
You just don't hear about them.
Wendy Lederman?
Thank you, and thanks, Kevin. It's always great to have you and hear from you. This is just so important, and it's just mind-blowing that this conversation isn't happening on a much more alarming kind of scale, I mean, I think the doomsday clock just got pushed back to 90 seconds, and then people get mad and call you an alarmist if you try to mention that. And in that context that you just mentioned, and then with Ukraine, you know, something I was looking into, just kind of going through like the defense budget for this year that was just passed, and there's another Senate bill, I've mentioned this a few times, Senate Bill 4066 that was introduced, and it allows for the DOE to supply the DOD. And even in like, I just feel like that it's just a much bigger umbrella problem, like with a lot of Biden's proposals for green infrastructure. It's so many new nuclear programs and so much money for having like minimums, like required minimums of depleted uranium, like to be produced. And so just the point I wanted to make, I don't know if you have a comment, I know we're short on time, but I think the non-proliferation treaty, I was looking through it, and it really like considers nuclear energy a fundamental right. And I feel like just the non-proliferation should include like our fundamental right to not get blown up, you know. And so that should include no nuclear, period. Like there, like, and because it supplies such a small fraction in Florida, we get 3% of our energy. Like Harvey's saying, you guys get 9% in California of your energy coming from nuclear. So it should be a moot point for the risk that it carries. So I just want to mention that. Thank you so much.
Cameron, did you want to respond real quick and then we'll move on?
No, it's an excellent point. I mean, the fatal flaw of the Non-Proliferation Treaty is that it sold the store on nuclear power. So the nuclear weapons states in the world, as treaty signers, are supposed to help the non-weapon states in the world develop their nuclear power programs in exchange for a promise not to develop nuclear weapons programs. And what's so schizophrenic and contradictory about that is, if you have uranium enrichment for nuclear power, if you have plutonium reprocessing from your nuclear power generated high-level radioactive waste, you have weapons grade uranium if you want it, and you have weapons grade plutonium if you want it. And in fact, certain countries that now have nuclear weapons use their nuclear power technology to get there. I mean, India is one example. Pakistan's another example. They're not signatories to the treaty, but among the signatories, I'd have to think about it some more. There are examples of that. The United States is one of the most hypocritical in the world. I mentioned Nuclear Fuel Services that had the explosion and casualties today in Irwin, Tennessee. They make fuel for the nuclear navy, which is a delivery mechanism for nuclear weapons. So how that's not considered nuclear weapons, I don't know. But now they're dabbling in highly enriched uranium to be used in nuclear weapons, and they're doing it as secretly as they possibly can. That's what Terry Lodge and Irwin Citizens Action Network are challenging. But the courts have ruled against them recently, and everybody's just pretending like there's no nuclear weapons activities going on here. Don't look here. So the US is as guilty as anybody in the world for the blurring of those lines. Tritium production at so-called commercial reactors in Tennessee, Watts Bar, that tritium is the hydrogen for hydrogen bombs. That's been going on since Bill Richardson was Clinton's energy secretary. How is that not nuclear weapons related? Of course it is. It's a violation of the Non-Proliferation Treaty.
And of course, you know, there are 4 reactors in Florida, so it's only a matter of time before Ron DeSantis gets his own nuclear weapons. We'll go to TATANKA and then Ron Leonard.
To underscore what Kevin said, and I feel like a broken record on here, but it must be said, the whole reason for developing nuclear power plants is to develop weapons grade material. It's absolutely necessary for the weapons. The cover story is domestic energy. And we were sold it, too cheap to meter, safe, and now they're telling us it's part of green energy. All a huge lie. It's part of the nuclear weapons program. Essential.
Right. Thank you so much. Well, we're at 10 minutes of 4 in California. We'll extend this if we can, Steve, just for a bit. I do want to point out that Ron Leonard is an expert, a major expert in renewables. There you go, an electric Cadillac and a nuclear explosion at the same time. We will be again next week, same time. We will take off on President's Day, and after President's Day, we'll have a new link to work with. We're getting our own Zoom platform, but this has been another great discussion. I want to point out after 2 hours, we still have 61 people. I couldn't have done that at Capital University. All my students would have walked out. So it's great to have all of you with us. Go ahead, Ron Leonard, please. I want to ask you, Ron Leonard, as an expert, one of our great experts on renewable energy, I'm hearing the possibility that battery technology might be crossed over from lithium to sodium. Have you heard anything like that? And because it will be an enormously important breakthrough. And can you update us on the developments in renewables?
So just to go through the whole retinue, you're used to batteries in your car being a piece of lead with surrounding sulfur acid to produce electricity. And there are the old AAA batteries that are sort of a carbon rod and a bunch of stuff around it. And now you see lithium batteries that are similar in shape or flat, and they all produce energy from various different forms of chemistry. The newest chemistry that we want to talk about now that you're mentioning, sulfur, has advantages, and it has the advantage of not having a rare material, lithium, that has to be mined, and also has the advantage of now, because of one company, StorTerra, having a high energy density, but it's a different form of battery. It's not sort of a mix of flowable materials, gooey materials in a battery. It's a flow battery. And a flow battery is different fundamentally in that it basically has a tank of something and a tank of something else and pumps that move the energy back and forth. Well, that in the past has worked really well, but nobody really commercialized it. And also it required more space than a normal battery. But this company, StorTerra, has come up with a way of making a sulfur flow battery at 250 watts per liter, which is a fairly high energy density battery. And they claim it's going to work. Good news is there's a lot of these companies with sulfur or other non-toxic flow batteries out there that do work. And unless you have a car or an airplane, it really doesn't matter how big the box is or how heavy it is, because it's just sitting there storing energy. The real key to all of this is the round trip efficiency. By that, I mean, when you put energy in and then you take energy back out again, how much energy do you lose? And the key to lithium ion batteries, they were very efficient in the high 90% efficiency range of taking energy in and sucking energy back out again. And that's the battle that we're facing. Good news is multiple solutions. Some of them work today. Some of them will work better tomorrow. We can go with this.
Wow, that's great. That's good to hear. So how soon can we expect to stop hearing these people screaming about batteries because of lithium?
Well, I don't think we really should scream about batteries because of lithium, because lithium can be taken out of seawater. It is available. It's not so rare that you can't find it. In fact, they've now come up with a place in the United States where they're going to mine lithium. I don't really think we should be mining lithium, but the bottom line being, it's available. We can do this. We can use lithium, we can use flow batteries, we can use the new water batteries that are made from seawater, salt lithium, non-lithium batteries. It all works. It's all fungible. It's cost effective now. And the reason we can say it's cost effective is the $100 watt barrier, which is the key barrier to making batteries efficient, has been crossed by Tesla. And crossed very efficiently. He's down probably in the $75 range of producing batteries. That's an amazing breakthrough. So everybody's going to reach that battery price and then pick your flavor.
Okay, there's one other thing I want to raise. Last week, someone posited that offshore windmills in the ocean, either stuck into the bottom of the ocean or with floating devices, cause vibrations and noise that affect whales, and in the last week, I've seen whales have washed up on shore near where windmills are being installed, and that great environmental activist Tucker Carlson, who we all know cares so much about the earth, is screaming that this is being caused by windmills.
So the Jersey windmill story, that's what you're talking about, the New Jersey windmill story.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, there's no windmills in New Jersey yet offshore. They're only testing sites to put windmills up. So 1 + 1 is not 2 unless you have the second one involved in the equation. And this makes no sense. This is a fallacy. If you have a fact and you can prove that fact, great. We should go with that. But no one has made the connection.
So you do not see a connection between the whales and
there's no windmills off of Jersey to make that thing happen. They don't exist. The only windmills in the Atlantic Ocean are up by Rhode Island. And I haven't heard any windmill deaths from whales in Rhode Island.
Well, there are a lot of windmills in the North Sea. Have they had
in the North Sea? Tons.
Yes, there are lots of them. Have they had environmental impacts? Anything like the death of whales in the North Sea based on?
Well, there is an environmental impact citing windmills, and you have to do that for fishing reasons and other things, ground that you're covering. There are many environmental impacts that you want to consider before citing windmills, but whales, we haven't heard anything about that in the North Sea.
And we haven't seen significant environmental impact. I haven't read of significant environmental impacts.
You do want to make sure that if you cite a bunch of windmills, they're not in the path of normal flow of birds going north to south and other things. Those things should all be carefully considered in a permitting process. But whales and windmills, not so much.
Okay. All right. I wanted to check. Mark Gross, do you have a hand up?
Yep. Thank you. So let me I'll work backwards. We'll start with the windmills. So I just saw a new circular toroidal design for propellers and wind turbine blades, which is far, like the decibels are a fraction of the decibels of a propeller blade. And we have designs for 30 megawatt floating offshore wind turbines. And
just
the
for the
12 to 14
30 megawatt is huge. That's really
the 12 to 14 megawatt wind turbines were based on the invention of the guy I work with, because Enril saw his gearless wind turbine generator in the American Wind Energy Association conference trade show in 2006, and they copied it. Then they scaled it up from 185 kilowatts to 12 to 14 megawatts, and provided that information to Vestas and GE and the other company, Iberdrola, I think it is.
Yes.
And so we have not only a gearless wind turbine expansion, but we've got blade design changes, and we're now going to be looking at that toroidal circular thing. That's the one. Yep, that's what I'm talking about.
That can
so
go
we're interested. We're interested in that, and we'll check it out. We'll probably use it for both wind turbines and ducted turbofans for aircraft, for battery electric aircraft, and for the wheel motors and other ways of propelling ground transportation. Now, on the batteries, you mentioned Sailor. We actually started with saline and progressed through saline, and we're now looking at sulfur and thing, but we're not looking at flow batteries. We're looking at solid state batteries. And if we can pull that off, it'll be good. And we're looking at 10 times or 7 to 10 times the capacity per kilogram of the best batteries today. And the tipping point, I was told about 5 years ago that the tipping point to go from hybrid electric aircraft to full battery electric commercial passenger aircraft is 700 watt hours per kilogram.
Yep.
We're aiming for production at 2,600 watt hours per kilogram, with a window to get up to 4.5 or 5.5 kilowatt hours per kilogram in the next several years after that. On the solar front, we are aiming at 42% efficiency, conversion efficiency, printed, inkjet printed, solar thin, fired ceramic, solar thin film, which compares to 18 to 23% of solar panels today. And all of this at about half the cost. So we'll also have structural breakthroughs and things like that for the wind turbines. And for solar canopies over parking and driveways, so we can have enough between those and rooftops, we can have enough surface area with the 42% efficiency to be able to actually power whole fleets of trucks and buses on the parking area and the buildings associated with it that they're on, with maybe some extensions up and down streets if necessary. So we actually have a plan for all of this. And the timing is, if we got funded today, 6 to 12 months to get batteries into alpha production.
All right, well, see me after the show. I'll write you a
for
check.
efficiency of a solar collector.
Ron wants to say something.
The theoretical limit for silicon solar cells of efficiency is 30%. So this is well and above the actual state of the art
Right.
we have today.
We're extending beyond the visible spectrum, which the silicon is able to do, into the infrared quite a ways. And we're also improving the conversion efficiency with this is not 3.5, but it is multi-junction solar. And in 1983, William got a patent for a fast semiconductor, faster than gallium arsenide, for a solar thin film that was going to be made on a custom $400 million custom stainless steel rolling mill. And
speaking of extending,
so we've got a long history in this.
We're past 7 o'clock. Some of us have things that we need to do besides be on Zooms all day. This is not the last time we're going to talk about this. So please, all you experts, please come back. We'll continue this as we learn more about it. But people got to eat, people got to sleep, people got to have bodily functions. We got to get going.
Okay, so let's give it, Dorothy, you get the last word. This has been great. Ron and Mark, I hope you guys are in touch.
Thank you, Sluggo.
Thank you,
Thank you
everybody.
very much.
Still have 56 people. Dorothy,
thanks,
Two
Ron.
things. First of all, there's a car called a Zeekr that's Chinese that now 641 miles per charge. You can just go online and check it out. I don't know what you can get the price. I didn't get the price. Also, a while ago, I heard about transparent solar panels. So something that you could just put on a.
Dorothy, let's pick that up later. Look, Dorothy, we don't have budget for overtime for the hardworking staff here. We do appreciate contributions.
That would be incredible. That would be incredible if they kept transparent solar panels.
It'd be incredible if we got paid for the overtime that we're putting in right now.
Sleep is optional.
Okay, you guys. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back next week. Ron and Mark will continue this. It's been great. And we will be back next week. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Steve. And this has gone out. We still have 48 folks with us, but we will adjourn and we will reconvene next week. Thank you, Wendy. Lissa, good to see you. I know Hattie has been on from Minnesota. Ruth, Dr. Ruth, great to see you. Mila, keep up the fight at Pacifica. Please, God knows we need that network. And we will be back again next week. Thank you, everybody. And
Dorothy, keep stirring those waters. You're a good contribution.
Yeah, we'll be back next week unless we go on strike for these overtime hours. We're going to unionize.
We'll pay you $1.50.
Ooh, and only beat us on every other Wednesday.
All right,
Thank you, everybody, for another marathon.